Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. Today we're going to be looking at how to scale without spending and achieve cost-efficient business comms. And I've got Tony and Michael here with me to walk you through this exciting topic. With a global recession coming up pretty soon, I think it's going to be important for us to be as cost-efficient as possible, especially while scaling. Now this session will be recorded and you'll be able to access that recording on demand and share it with anyone else you think would find this content useful. This is an interactive session, so please do send through your questions as they come to you and we'll have time at the end to answer those. The session runtime will be about 45 minutes and we hope you're looking forward to hearing more. So now I'm going to pass over to Tony and he's going to introduce and share more about the agenda for today's session.
Welcome all. Tony Gooch. I'm here as product manager at Voxbone and I look after all of the integrations. So all of the technical capability that we use within our voice network. And I've been responsible for getting an awful lot of these integrations out there into the marketplace. And we've got one of our great customers, Michael from WhatConverts. Michael.
Hey everyone, Michael Cooney. I'm the co-founder of a company called WhatConverts. We work with Tony for the integration and that's what we're going to cover today. So a bit about me is I spent a good 20 years in the digital marketing space, generating leads, capturing leads and reporting them to clients, which led to WhatConverts. So we'll get into all of that and how we use Voxbone.
So as Michael said, obviously what we'll do is we'll give you some background about WhatConverts and Michael will tell you that story. We'll come on to kind of how we are using Voxbone to help scale from a CPaaS perspective. The terminology we use around that, so the likes of bring your own carrier and what that means in the technical outcome. How those integrations are then used to drive value propositions, and ultimately some questions and answers at the end to really give you an opportunity to kind of delve into detail about anything that comes up, whether that be technical or business orientated. Feel free to ask your questions all the way through and say we'll have a session at the end where we go through those answers.
So to introduce who WhatConverts is and how that relates to Voxbone, we're an all-in-one lead tracking platform. So as I mentioned, I've spent a good 20 years in the digital marketing space, first as a directory generating leads for industrial companies, and then as a full service digital marketing agency where we had customers where we'd build websites or run ad campaigns with a big focus on generating leads. And we always had this hassle of tracking all leads, whether it was a form, a call, or even web chat. So we sort of covered the forms, we covered the chats, but calls was always a problem. And this is when we discovered Twilio, and they pretty much put calls in the cloud. So because calls are in the cloud, you could now manipulate in how you connected calls, and you could easily tie telephone calls to your marketing data. So that covered a big hole in the lead tracking. So now we were actually able to catch calls and tie it to the marketing. If you see this image, you can see someone phoning, they're connecting through Google Ads to a phone call, which is then stored on the computer screen as a lead. And to make that happen is we use call tracking numbers, which associates with Voxbone, but we also tie it to the marketing data. So the great thing is if you have a product that you're promoting on Google Ads and someone searches for that product, they find your ad, they click on the ad, and then they come to your website and they make a phone call, we can track the entire thing. So we know what keyword they searched for, we know what ad they clicked on, what page they landed on, and then we have the full call recording with a transcription with conversion metrics as well. So to say all that, we're a complete lead tracking platform, but most people start with us with the call tracking because it's the one lead metric that you can't track without having a third party. So yeah, basically, that's what we do, full lead tracking service with a big part of it being the call tracking. We're happy to say that we're now one of the leading call tracking providers in the digital marketing space. And if you go to the next slide, Tony, And our aim, so what this image represents is, you have a business owner, he's spending money in marketing, capturing the leads, and then those leads turn into sales. Ultimately, that's the aim of our company, and that's what we try and do with our clients. So our software enables you to do that, enables you to track what marketing dollars you're spending. Then it tracks what leads you're getting in, whether it's a phone call, a forum, a chat, or even e-commerce sales. And then we can value those leads and report on the sales from them. So you get complete marketing clarity. We sort of take you from marketing chaos into marketing clarity. So that's a little bit of a background of WhatConverts, and I hope that gives you a good idea of what we're about.
So as Michael talked about, there are some challenges that come along with using CPaaS platforms. And ultimately, where the story initially started with Voxbone and WhatConverts was really around when WhatConverts started to scale. Often what we find is when customers come to us that they're using CPaaS platforms and looking to use our integration, some of the challenges that they generally find is that they've got a number of these types of challenges being presented to them. So one of the most kind of common examples and very appropriate for WhatConverts was when you use CPaaS providers, it looks really quite cheap. They're pence per minute rates and everything like this. But what happens is you can end up with a lot of margin stacking. Often CPaaS platforms don't actually run their underlying network. They're actually buying that from somebody else. So what you end up with is this increased stacked cost. And obviously, when you scale as quickly as some of WhatConverts opportunities have, this can really create a really high expensive cost from what initially looked like something that was rather attractive. But that's not the only issue we see. We do see problems where different CPaaS platforms have service interruptions, maybe in a specific country, maybe some of the lesser known regions where call tracking is still valuable, but they might have not put the investment into that region. They might only have a single point of failure within a specific region. Something that obviously Voxbone prides itself of trying to ensure that we've got dual resilience everywhere that we run operations. But the other things that really kind of comes back, especially on things like call tracking, where you're taking part of that customer call, the need for quality and the need for managing the fact that that is a quality driven call, that you can hear the user effectively, because you're really taking part of that customer's really important call and making sure they can still transact on it when they're getting that phone call into their customer service operation is really important. So having that kind of visibility of the quality of the call and what's going on is really important. And lastly, it's all about how we aggregate the coverage, how we can create those capabilities that interface with the likes of Twilio and the other CPaaS platforms to make it so that you've got all of that coverage from a single configuration. So it's one of these really useful features. And ultimately, we'll talk about all of these in more detail as we go through today's session. But before we go further on, I think it's really important to talk about the terminology about bring your own carrier. It's often something that's a little bit mistaken, especially when we talk about it from the Voxbone side. Really what we're talking about here is bringing Voxbone to your other platform. And the way we like to kind of split this down is that we have these three logical layers. The network layer, which is us as Voxbone. We're the carrier that basically allows you to support your global SIP provision. So we can terminate into all of these different countries. The logic layer that you use, so the Twilios, the Signal Wires, all of these CPaaS platforms, that's where you can build all of these telephony platforms in code. So you've got this well-known and capable set of code base that you can build in this middleware. And then what you have on the top of this is you have your WhatConverts platform, where they're doing this great lead tracking capability at this top level of abstraction, where they can wrap this up and really bring their own use case to the market. But what really happens here, and the way we like to think about this, is that bring your own carrier is really about the greatest expertise you can bring at each level. So what converts is bringing all of this marketing experience and all of this lead tracking capability into their top application layer. The likes of Twilio and SignalWire and Nexmo and all of these other CPaaS platforms that we're integrated to are bringing that really great software layer so you can turn code into telco. And at the bottom, you're bringing Voxbone as a carrier network to actually achieve the great global SIP coverage, the reliability, the quality, the coverage, and all of that improved routing capability that you get. And it's really about bringing the best in all of these different arenas together to end up with a better solution than any individual team can get.
So yeah, so as Tony mentioned, as we grew and we got more and more numbers, we're talking tens of thousands of numbers in our platform. And we, getting close at that stage, we're getting close to 1 million minutes a month. And now we're way beyond that. But the costs skyrocketed. And we needed to look at the different options. So one, we wanted to reduce costs because reducing cost, we're a bootstrapped company. So any cost reduction we can get, we could actually reinvest into the company. And so you're talking several $1,000s if we can find a good provider. But one thing we knew, and Tony mentioned, is call quality is paramount. You can't have a customer using you if one call is bad quality, you're going to hear about it. And so we knew, call quality is absolutely critical, but we also knew that we could save some money. So that's when we reached out to different providers. And Voxbone wasn't the first carrier that we reached out to save costs. We reached out to others, and some would, they were decent, but they only served the USA market. So we're a USA-based company, but we serve globally. So we had one network carrier that they only served the USA, and over time we found their support wasn't that great. So we tried several others as well, and we came across Voxbone. And the great thing with Voxbone is, they have a global presence. The calls are stable. The quality was there. And then because of the amount of calls and minutes we were doing, they were able to offer us substantial savings. So that was really important to us. We weren't going to sacrifice quality to get better pricing. And in addition to that, we didn't want to rebuild the logic code that we had built with Twilio, because as our lead tracking expanded, so the functionality expanded. Initially, it was just connecting calls from someone phoning a call tracking number to the destination number. That was how we started. But then it became like people wanted a dialing tree. If it's for a sales call, send it to the sales department. If it's for a service call, send it there. Then we had call transcriptions. It got very, the logic level became more and more complicated, which we had built in Twilio. And it's great that Twilio allows you to have all this functionality. So that was a problem. We were like, okay, we don't want to rewrite the code on another platform. So we're very happy to find out that we could have the logic on Twilio, but the base layer where the actual calls are connected into the SIP trunking functionality, we could plug in Voxbone. So that really helped. So we didn't have to become telecom experts at all. We briefly looked at it and realized, no, there's too many moving parts and things you have to cover. So with our move, we saved costs. We got the call quality we needed. We got the global reach that we needed as well. And increasingly what's becoming more important serving countries outside of America is regulation. Europe is very strong with their privacy. So now you have to, in each country, like in Germany, you have to provide an address. You have to comply with their regulations. And through Voxbone, we're able to do that. So we found it's been a really great partnership just on all those levels. They ticked a lot of boxes, and it allowed us to expand beyond the coverage we're also getting with Twilio, whilst keeping the functionality and that API strength that Twilio has with them.
Thanks, Michael. So as Michael said, really what we're trying to do when we're building these integrations is that these integrations are not built in isolation. We always try, especially as myself with being the product manager, is I always try and work with the CPaaS providers. And often people don't realize is that there are parts of these CPaaS providers that are really focused on the BYOC angle. So we have relationships with the likes of Twilio and SignalWire where they understand that actually this is sometimes a necessary evil, that we actually can provide services that are higher quality or better geared to scalability than they can sometimes provide themselves. And really that's the idea of this, is it's really, I say, not really taking away from the CPaaS providers. It's really just plugging in the Voxbone capability at the bottom to just provide that extra level of capability and experience, just really focusing on what we do best, which is all kind of what Michael talked about. It's about the coverage reach, it's about the resilience, it's about the quality and all of the regulatory compliance. But it's not just, as I say, it's not just Twilio. It's quite a significant number of CPaaS providers, and it's very much the case of what we try and do is work with the providers and actually make it so our integration guides, which are all available on our website, so you can actually go and see and plug this in, even at a point where you've just got a free trial account. So it's not a requirement to have a full paid for account. You can actually go and test and validate a lot of this up front. So it's very much the case of don't take our word for it. It's very much you can go and use it, play with it, and really experience all of these capabilities using these accounts. And I say all of this is on the website with clear guides on how to do it. And it really is just a few lines of additional code just wrapped around your application. So it's very quick and easy to get involved in and use this capability. And the way that this really works, if you're interested in the technicals, is it ultimately just is a way of us interfacing with SIP. So what we try and basically do is work within the CPaaS providers framework to work through the verbiage that they provide. So in Twilio, it's the TWIMLL code base. And we just put in the extra lines of code on how you would then interface with the Voxbone platform. And it's to say it's both inbound and outbound. You can do all these complicated use cases, but it's very much the case of your app is really controlling all the logic. And then what we're doing is we're being the plumbing underneath, I say, bringing you those savings, bringing you their quality and capability, and I say all these features to help you where, as a developer, as a business, the way you might be focused in one country, but are serving the global kind of marketplace, being able to see all the regulation changes, seeing all of these kind of things like Michael talked about in terms of privacy, they're all available via the portal that you get access to. So you can go in, do all the right things. It's all a narrated flow. So you're never going to find yourselves in challenges with regulatory compliance, because it's all there and say narrated flow in the portal to help you through those stages. And there's some more kind of features that really help with the underpinnings of this. One of the things that we're really passionate about at Voxbone is really trying to build on open standards. So we really do try and focus on making sure all of our SIP provision is all SIP RSC standard certified. So we're doing things in a very consistent way. We've got a lot of toolkits over the top of our platform. So where there are like lack of features, for want of a better word, with the likes of Twilio, where Twilio use or don't have a SIP verb for diversion headers, for example, we've got capability in our platform where we can add these features in, so it can give you increased functionality even above and beyond what the CPaaS provider can provide out of the box. And that's some really useful features, especially when you're doing things like this use case with call tracking, being able to modify the from number or the to number to who was originally calling. So you maintain that for the third party is really useful. And say all of these features are kind of plugged into the integration guide. But the other thing that we kind of think is really important, especially when you're managing kind of this global estate one of the things that Voxbone has is this concept of a single SIP trunk. So instead of having one SIP trunk per country you're operating in, especially if you're operating like WhatConverts into 20, 30, 40 countries, that becomes quite a operational overhead to look after. So having that as a single configuration, so you've got this one master configuration in place, really gives you an awful lot of flexibility to manage all of these operational requirements in a really easy to manage one single setup. And the simple thing is, as you want to scale to these new regions, adding extra numbers, having new regions that you move into is as simple as ordering the number or porting in the number from an existing provider. And we can then do that and bring these capabilities on board and really give you that extra functionality in a very easy to manage setup. And obviously, CPaaS providers are not the only things that we do. Some of the other things that we've got capability is that you can start to link these platforms between one another. So you can actually start to use the likes of Twilio with a contact center like Genesys, or pass this through into Zoom Phone or Teams. Or if you're using SBCs like Ribbon and Catalaya and Cisco as well, or if you're building everything yourself using soft PBXs, we're really kind of agnostic to the actual underlying technology. So it gives you that flexibility that you may be using one thing today, but using Voxbone doesn't limit you to a single platform. So if we found, or what if Michael found like Twilio wasn't doing what they needed going forward, he knows that we've underpinned the capability. So there are always options for him to consider if that functionality, or if there was a new generation of kind of call tracking that was needed, maybe with location information that we couldn't get via that mechanism and somebody else had it, that those features are always available to him without that kind of complication of having to change underlying provider. And we can solve those challenges. And as I say, that's my job, to try and keep ahead of the trends, to really give you that flexibility as an end customer.
So you want me to tackle the beginning of this?
Yeah, I mean, if you just give us a kind of, as we've gone through, Michael, I mean, one of the things that we've talked about together is that kind of there's lots of challenges that you went through when you initially kind of looked at this. But yeah, put it in your own words in terms of kind of where we're at now and what the lessons and learnings and how long it's been that you've been with us.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the, there was the cost challenge. There was also the global challenge. So those were two big challenges. And when we start out, we always have a global approach. Myself, I've lived in South Africa, in the UK, and in the USA. So we didn't just want to serve USA companies. And what we found is we were serving global companies because of how we started. And Twilio initially supported a lot of them. But then over time, as regulations increased and they had to jump through more hoops, they just pulled back. So where we had a customer, we kind of got left stranded. I remember a French customer, they were told, well, Twilio, this company isn't going to support us anymore. So we had a problem, like we needed to find another provider to support those international customers. And we also had finding that some providers, the quality in different countries was pretty bad. So South Africa, where I originally come from, I've actually still got an agency out there where my brother runs the agency there, and they were using WhatConverts and loved the platform. Their clients loved it, but there was a delay in the phone calls. So, over time, with the increasing quality in those different areas, that's really helped us partner with Voxbone. But to be honest, the majority of our income does come from the USA. So the cost saving while maintaining quality was important. And looking back at it, so back in 2017, we joined Voxbone. So the company was actually started in March 2015. So after 2 years of running, we had already, got a substantial amount of numbers and calls. And in 2015, we joined Voxbone. And at that time, being a bootstrap company again, we were looking at it and we were saying, hey, if we save 10, 15%, we can actually employ another team member. So to the level where we were saving, and it's a moving target depending on how it, whether it's local or international numbers, but we were looking at it and saying, look, we can save $3,000 to $5,000, and that could go towards employing somebody. So it was pretty substantial, and it was a growth lever, to help us grow during that time. Is there any other thing you want me to touch on, Tony?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that is always useful, Michael. So when Voxbone generally kind of goes and speaks to customers out in the wider marketplace, there's often a view that we only deal with larger companies.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we know how many employees you've got at WhatConverts, but are you okay to share that? Because I think it kind of cuts through a couple of these myths that we're only kind of geared up to dealing with large companies.
Yeah. No, I mean, at the time when we started working with you guys, we were only like 4 team members at that time. We're now 8. And we don't consider how many employees you have as a success metric. We try purposely run a small team. And a lot of the time, the philosophy, if we're doing repetitive tasks, we're going to automate it. We've got a very strong development side to our company. And so, for instance, even the regulatory things, that takes time of a person. So instead of putting a person to deal with the regulations, we'll rather partner with Voxbone, but then we will program into your API where a user comes in, and if they're from Germany, they enter their address, no person is touching that. So where we find anything that can be automated or optimized, programmatically, that's what we're going to do. So we are a small team of 8, but we think our small team does a lot of work that much larger teams don't do.
Yeah, and again, that for me is one of the reasons that we wanted to kind of work with you to get this story out. We felt it was a real kind of shining example of what is possible. Ultimately, you get all those cost savings, which obviously we kind of talked about a lot, but you've got a lot of benefit from the wider Voxbone platform. You kind of touched upon the APIs. As I say, we do have APIs as one of our key feature sets. Really not kind of playing into the CPaaS space, but really about helping companies like WhatConverts that are focused on automation.
Mm-hmm.
You can do all of the kind of regulatory compliance piece by API. You can do like number ordering by API. So it meant that all of these features can be wrapped up. And again, that comes back to like what I was talking about with the BYOC offering, is that you can wrap all of those kind of good features into the WhatConverts platform and ultimately deliver something for global provision in a much more straightforward way. And as I say, knowing all of the qualities there, knowing that you've got this web portal to help. I think one of the other things, Michael, that obviously we've worked together for a length of time. One of the other things that I know we've kind of talked about a lot privately, but one of the things that I was really passionate about is making sure that we've got a really good support model.
Mm-hmm.
So do you want to just talk about, I mean, we've had kind of issues come up over the course of time, but do you want to just talk about, I think, as I say, we've dealt with those really effectively, and I can talk about that, but do you want to just talk about how you found the support of this and just generally how things have gone?
Yeah, I mean, with any company, support is really important. If you have a question or if you're dealing with something tricky, being able to reach out and get a response that's sensible and in a timely manner is really important. Many companies today, support has a bad rep because they try and go for the cheapest level. But we find that, there's actually thought, we're actually in contact with yourself, which is, what I'd imagine a telco expert. So when we do have issues, they get solved intelligently. We're not just passed around the department where nobody knows what's going on. So, that really helps us tremendously. So yeah, I'd say the support has been really good. And I know when we're dealing with the API, sometimes APIs, they don't behave as they're meant to, or they don't have a specific functionality that we would require, and then we can reach out and you guys help us deal with that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that again, it's a really important aspect of this. One of the things that we kind of pride ourselves on at Voxbone is that we try not to be kind of what I would term legacy in telco, in that, hey, it's not our fault.
Yeah.
One of the things that we try and do where we've got these integrations and we're specialised in really driving that, is that all of our support team are, and obviously they're globally based, so we run 24/7 support, is that all of the team members can actually help diagnose where the issue is. So instead of coming back and saying, hey, it's not our fault, we can actually highlight, hey, look, we think it's this aspect. We haven't received X, Y, or Z in this Twilio call, or we're missing, or we're seeing this from a delivery into the PSTN, or the end device wasn't answering. All of these things are completely visible real time to our platform. So that's one of the things that we
yeah. Now that you mention that, because we're connecting so many calls, we in the millions of minutes. So you can imagine, even if a small percentage goes wrong, we hear it from our customers pretty quickly. So for us to troubleshoot and find the problem, normally we'd have to reach out to Twilio and Voxbone and just try to identify, is this a Twilio problem? Is this a Voxbone problem? So yeah, that level of support. But first of all, even before, the quality is so important so that you don't have to overload support. And we find that with WhatConverts is that, because we're a small team, we have to be efficient. Because if you've got a lot of problems, it just rolls up. And I heard someone the other day talking about, your company's, you've got a backlog of 100 tickets. And we're like, what? Our backlog of tickets is the first thing, in the morning, and we've got like 5 tickets we have to deal with. And the reason we can have that is because of the quality of service, first of all. And I think that's important because your support is good, but if your network had a lot of problems, your support would be overloaded. So the first point of offering excellent support, which we're known for, and we always tell people, search on Google for WhatConverts reviews and see what people are saying about us. That's a little plug. But the way we look at it is strategically is if you have a product that's pretty much bulletproof, it's going to reduce the support and it's going to give your support team margin to be able to deal with real support questions that actually come up. And I think that goes to how WhatConverts operates and also how Voxbone operates. Because you can imagine if your network didn't offer quality calls, your support would be overloaded.
Yeah, absolutely, Michael. And again, it kind of coming back to that, the other thing that I think kind of helps us along those same lines is that we aren't just sitting still. What we're trying to do is constantly keep these integrations up to speed with modern day requirements. So ultimately, since I've been here, we've updated the Twilio integration a couple of times, and I know you're running on the latest version of what our feature set is right now. But there are more changes that we've just kind of launched. They're in beta at the moment with a different live customer. But we know that ultimately when those are available, that you'll have a look at those, see if they fit in your model. But that we're going to keep bringing innovation to you. So you might be able to take advantage of that. Obviously, sometimes we do have features that match, sometimes we don't, but we're always trying to bring those new feature sets to the market. And as I say, some of those things are really about, for you, some of the things that we're trying to bring, and obviously you kind of touched on it with the privacy side of things, is things like pulling out location of where the phone was used. Things like that are really things that we're trying to underpin some of our capability with. And obviously that's still kind of longer term in the roadmap, but there's lots of features that we kind of know and see in our longer term roadmap that we'll be able to kind of work together, not just now, but into the future, and bringing you all those features where you can enhance and increase your own product set based on our own innovations. And that's one thing was really great as a product manager, to see these kind of relationships grow and be able to help you with these new features.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely true. As I mentioned earlier, early on in our creation of WhatConverts, we thought, should we get telco experience on our staff? And I'm really glad we didn't. And it's because of what you were saying there is, we ultimately looked at it and saying, okay, where are we going with the company? What's important to us? And what's important to us is capturing leads, managing leads, reporting on those leads, helping marketers and business owners, do the leads. So we then saw, the call tracking part of it is very important, but it's not strategic for us. So what's actually happened is, by using a telco expert, you guys continue to develop new functions and features, and we get to benefit on the other side of your innovation. So if we had that inside WhatConverts, we would have had to continue try and increase our features on the lead management side, as well as trying to do it on the telco side. And in my agency days, we created our own CRM at one time, and it was great. It worked, it fitted great. But then as technology increased and you got to your web 2.0 days, and then social media came in, and then you needed additional things for your CRM, it just became such a drag to keep it updated. So that was a learning thing for me personally, to realize, stick with your wheelhouse, what's really strategically important for where your company is going. And if there's other expertise that you can just tap into and rely on, let that team continue to innovate and develop, and then you'll benefit from that as well, instead of trying to run your code, strategically progress there, but then in the back end, you're still trying to keep up to date with the plumbing. So, yeah, that we're very happy that we didn't become telco experts, but that we have great partners who enable us to do what we need to do and even more, and it keeps on increasing every year.
Cool. I mean, I think that's great. I think from what I've seen, there are actually quite a few questions that have come in. So I think, Natasha, do you want to just start asking some questions? Because I think we've had quite a few come from what I've seen.
Yeah, we have had quite a few come in. I think one of the main ones coming through, I know that WhatConverts is a shining example of a customer for you guys, but can you mention any other customers you're working with and tell us a bit about those, Tony?
Yeah, so we've got around 20 customers on our base that are using one of the CPaaS integrations. Obviously, there's some that I don't have like naming permissions for, but the other great example we've got on our website is Aircall. Obviously, Aircall are a really great example at the wider industry, using Twilio and Voxbone to underpin their network. And I say, if you've got more details or kind of questions on that, there's actually a really great case study on the website that kind of talks about the technicals of that in the case study. So there's some really good stuff about how that kind of function is used at again a really massive scale, how it's worked for Aircall in terms of scaling their business globally. And so that's really the kind of another really great example. But obviously at the other end of the scale, right, lots of people in Aircall, and ultimately they're doing the same thing as WhatConverts, using that kind of best of breed technology for each layer, and ending up kind of really being excellent in the marketplace and growing successfully because of it.
Great. Michael, you really mentioned earlier on about the quality of product at WhatConverts. We've actually had an interesting question come through for you, which just says, there's a lot of call tracking companies out there. What does make WhatConverts different?
Yeah, there are a lot of call tracking companies out there. When we started, there was about 20. And basically when Twilio put telecommunications in the cloud, it enabled, people to become competitors. So I think now there's well over 100 call tracking companies, and I really feel sorry for people, who are looking for a call tracking provider. It's like, how do you choose? So the way we look at it, and it really comes back to my agency days. Before we started WhatConverts, we used call tracking. And the downside with call tracking is that tracking calls or counting calls, it's difficult to get value out of that. It's difficult to see insights from it. So we realized that having all your leads, like your form, your calls, your e-commerce transactions, and your web chats all in one place allows you to see the complete marketing picture in one place. Because if a user comes to your website, they might start the chat, and end as a call, or they might fill in a form and then do a phone call. And if they siloed into separate systems, it's difficult to get clarity. So with our system, everything is in one place. You get to see web chats and forms right next to each other. But then the second differentiator is our tools that allow you to manage the leads. You can group, like let's say you want to see all your leads by a specific keyword. Within 2 seconds, you can see that. If you want to see all your leads by a specific landing page, you can do that. Whether it's landing page, keyword, campaign, content, it doesn't matter, even by the ad. If you want to say, well, show me the ad that generated leads, and it'll show you all the leads. So that's the second thing. It's just the lead management, how you can sort, group, filter, like super quick and all in one place. And just to mention that we have competitors that say they track all the leads as well. But when you go into their system, they do track them, but they track them individually in separate places. So you don't get, and it seems like a small thing, but you don't get to see the data together, and it might seem small, but when you're working with it as a marketer trying to get insights, it's huge. So that's the other thing. It's the way our database is built. It's very difficult to do it, but our system does it really efficiently. And then the last one I'd say is our reporting. We have a super duper report builder. So you can run reports on anything, anything from keywords. So we have a dentist, and he wanted to know what procedures, so if you're thinking root canal or crowns or dental veneers, what procedures do they get the most leads for? In our system, you can build that report like 2 seconds. There's car dealerships. It's like, what make and model of cars do we get the most leads for? And you can create that report very quickly. And also coming back to the telecoms, when people phone in, are they asking for sales or are they asking for service? So we can run a report that says, you're running a Google Ads campaign, and this is how many sales calls you got. So that's the other benefit. It's collecting the data is one part, and that's what a lot of the call tracking companies do, but they miss the whole lead management and organization, and then the reporting to get those insights. So that becomes more important once you start tracking leads and you think, okay, I'm still not getting, sorry for the long answer to that. That's it.
No, that's great. It's really interesting to see how much granular segmentation and insight you have. I mean, Tony, I'd love to hear your perspective on what makes Voxbone so different in the market. We've actually had a couple questions. I think you teased the audience earlier by saying, there are potential innovations coming up. So a couple of people would like to know what the product roadmap looks like for Voxbone.
Yeah, so in terms of kind of the end vision, say the strap line I'm trying to kind of sell my marketing team on is really Voxbone underpins your telco future. And that's really about trying to make sure that we're innovating and basically being able to be connected to all of the modern tools. So that's really the kind of fundamental approach that I'm trying to build out. So I say that's the idea of, you can have all of these different platforms, and we know kind of when you get into a bigger enterprise, some of these challenges exist. You might have like a legacy Avaya or Cisco PBX. You might have some new Twilio code or something else that you're doing that's newer. But sometimes businesses can't find a way to unpick themselves from these legacy platforms, or find a way to kind of think their roadmap forward, because they might have, let's say, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars or pounds of cost linked to these platforms. They're looking at this massive challenge. Really, where we see ourselves helping with that is that we can start to underpin all of these different platforms so that you can then start to use our interop capability. So where they might not natively talk to one another, what you might be able to do is then use the Voxbone platform, the underlying network, to provide this interop capability using all of our toolkits to basically allow you to interface platforms that, I say, natively, that they don't work together. So that's really our vision on the kind of overall scale. And all of that's then supported with the web portal. So again, you don't have to be like overly telco experts. You can use all of the stuff that we're putting together into our web portal. Use all of our integration guides. So when you are kind of plugging in code into Twilio or capability into SBCs, all of that complexity, you don't need to have a certified engineer. You just got that easy setup guide to follow. And ultimately, then you can use this as a toolkit to plug all these systems into one another. And you end up with this really great outcome of kind of having all these interconnected systems. But it allows you to then have almost an independent roadmap for what you want to use. So do you want to standardize on Teams or Zoom or Cisco, for example, for your UCAS environment? You can plug us into all of those different systems to help your day-to-day business run. But you can also then plug us into your contact center, or any of your other platforms. And as Michael kind of talked about, you get the savings from all of those different platforms all put together. So we can generate significant cost reductions over all of those wider platforms. And that's really the idea that we've got, is that we're really focusing on that underlying network. And then how you use us, which tool you use on the top, is really down to our customers. You get all the benefits, you get the cost reduction, and then say we're really playing to our, same as Michael said, we're playing to our wheelhouse, that we're building that global SIP network. We're focusing on the quality, we're focusing on the support capability, so that makes sure that you're getting the service. And say ultimately, our ideal is that nobody ever has to contact us. We'll just run in the background, all your calls work perfectly, and you just have a really great experience with using our network.
Fantastic. It really is cool to see, the scope of that functionality, but that you also get the personalization as well. Just to be conscious of time, I think that is all we have time for today. I hope everyone who's joined us has really enjoyed this discussion and hearing about this case study, and has hopefully learned a lot about how they can be cost efficient with their own scaling in the future. I'd like to thank both Tony and Michael for joining us today. You've both been fantastic. And if anyone does have any future questions, I'm sure you'll both be more than happy to answer them. As I mentioned, this recording will be available on demand, so you'll be able to watch it again and share it with any of your colleagues. I think a lot of people would benefit from this information, so I would recommend getting it out there to as many people as possible. But thank you both for joining us today, and thank you everyone as well for joining us too.